Hey everyone, welcome to the Managed Comics Thought Stream. And today I'm really happy about today's episode. We are going to talk with Django Bohren of the Comics Place in Bellingham, Washington. He's also the creator of a competitor to Managed Comics called the Comic Shop Assistant, which makes him my mortal enemy. So we'll probably fight, and that will be fun. No, but he's a good guy. We've talked a lot and collaborated quite a bit over the last probably 18 months, almost 2 years, really talking about data. And we've got some really great dialogues going on with Penguin Random House, with DC and Lunar, and I know Django is talking to folks at Diamond as well. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. So we thought we would kind of break down a bunch of the data that we use, how we use it, and we can also talk about what happens when this data is bad, why it's important that we get good data, and why this isn't just like a couple of nerds raging about bad data, why this actually impacts the entire industry as a whole. But let me start out with a couple little kind of housekeeping things. I always forget how this slide thing works. So our agenda, we'll just do a quick Managed Comics update, and then Django and I will pop in and start talking about barcodes, comic book data. We'll take your questions as always. So if you have a question, you know what to do. Just shout out and we'll talk to you. Quick development update. So we added a whole bunch of new features. We've done a whole bunch of bug fixes. We really focused for the last month, I would say, one on keeping the guys safe, but two on Geek Fetch data. So really kind of improving the underlying data architecture that provides everything else. And to that end, we are now able to bring in DC data from Diamond, which we weren't able to do before without breaking our Lunar kind of hookups. We can bring in PRH data for all kinds of different products, which we weren't able to bring in before. We're also normalizing a bunch of the ISBNs and UPCs, which we'll get to a little bit further down the road, because the way those things can come in are in like 3 different formats, basically. And so now our system's intelligent enough that it can identify that and create the other versions of it that it needs to. Which it couldn't do before, which meant we were having a lot of duplicate data in our system. So the system's getting smarter. As a result, we've done a bunch of different things on the Managed Comics side. A couple of key ones are we now have shelf copies for initial orders, and I think final order cutoff shelf copies are coming this week. We're going to start tying in to sales and things like that. And there will also be, there was an interesting weird bug, because we rely on Shopify to be your kind of source of truth for all customers. Somehow some customers can get in there without a name, an email address, or sorry, a first name or a last name, but they have to have an email address or a phone number. So we did a little tweak so that now if you find one of those customers that has no name, you can actually click on the Shopify ID in Managed Comics, and it'll take you back to the customer ID so that you can get in there and fix them up. Our changelog, of course, has all our details. Just quick shout out to the boys, Taras and Kirill, who 5 weeks of, I talk to Taras pretty much every day, and the things that he tells me about like what his folks are going through, like air raid sirens at multiple times of the day, because they get a warning when the bomb goes up, and they get a warning when the bomb is kind of in the vicinity. So yeah, I can't even imagine what these guys are going through. So the fact that they're getting anything done is a pretty great testament to them as people. So as you guys know, many ways to get in touch with us. You can find help on the Managed Comics widget. You can get help on the help site, and you can always go to managedcomics.com, which is where you'll find our knowledge base. The knowledge base has gotten even smarter recently. So if you have a question, the first place I suggest you ask it is in the knowledge base, because honestly, that's where I ask it when you guys ask me a question. 9 times out of 10, I forget how exactly things work. So this is kind of like my second brain. So you have direct access to my second brain. Congratulations. We've added a new feature called roadmap.managecomics.com where you can actually vote on upcoming features. So you can go through there, scroll, and hit an up or a down. What it does is it sends you an email to verify that you're a real human being. And once you click on that verification, then you can up and down at your heart's content. I'll know who you are though. So if you're doing nasty things, I'll know. And I won't do anything, but I'll know. Get the guide. So the guide is the best place to get kind of the latest info all in one package. I've done a lot of thinking about workflows and what a daily workflow is, what a weekly workflow, what a monthly workflow is. So there's a bunch of new features around that you should definitely check out. But now, with all that out of the way, I'm going to bring in our special guest star, Django. Django, sir.
Howdy.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I love barcodes.
Barcodes are the best, right? We're going to have so much fun today talking about barcodes. I was hoping that I was going to do a quick tutorial on the scanner, but I'm waiting for a response from the scanner people. I've had a little bit of a hard time getting it to recognize both the UPC +5 and the ISBN +5s at the same time. Oh. So I'm just kind of going back and forth with them. But we'll talk about all the other good things and why UPC and ISBN +5 are even things. Let's wonder what the best way to do this would be. Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way. So I put together a little slide deck where we can talk about some specific things. These are kind of the types of barcodes that we as the comics industry most frequently get involved in. We're not really dealing with the 2D barcodes, which are QR code kind of style. This is all flat 1D barcodes. So it's just the series of lines that you're used to. So comic barcodes are either 12 or 17 digits. 12 is before, I think it's like 2000 is when Diamond kind of got involved and created the last 5-digit thing. Before that, the last 2 digits actually represented the issue number. So actually, sorry, the month number. So a lot of early 80s and 90s newsstand things will actually be very similar to what the BiPad code is, except it was a 12-digit instead of 14. ISBNs are either 10 or 13 digits. And I think that goes down to everything before 2006 is a 10-digit. Everything after is 13. And then we have ISBN +5, which is where they add a 5 and then the price up to $100. And we'll get into a little bit of that. BiPad is something that Django and I are currently butting our heads against because the magazine trade reuses the same UPC code every year. So they do issues 1 to 12, and then next year issues 1 to 12. So every year they recycle through their UPC codes.
It's probably fine. It's probably fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. We don't have to worry about it. We'll just skip on to the next one, which is UPC in general. And we won't talk very much at all about just kind of generic UPC codes. So anything from a toy to a pack of cards or anything like that. Honestly, I haven't done any research on that stuff. I don't know what kind of hells that provides, but I'm sure they're all new ones. This is a great diagram I found out there on the internet about what the ISBN means. So first of all, it's an international standard book number. Pre-2006, it was only 10 digits. A lot of the time it started with the 7. So if you see a 781, that'll be the pre-2006 numbers. So basically the 9 or the 7 tells us that it's an ISBN, and it's specifically formatted now as a book scan ISBN number. The 1 identifies the country. So 1 is North America, and then there's a bunch of different country numbers. The next little string of numbers, so 940313 is the publisher identifier. So every publisher has a different identifier for that. The 09 is the title edition and format. You know what? There's So in the 9.4, there's publisher identifier, and I think there's also like product identifiers in there. That last number is a check digit, which is a mathematical sum of all the digits before it. And I actually have the code for how that gets created, and it's a treat. Wasn't that fun?
Well, okay. So can you clarify the country?
Yeah,
Are there only 9 countries in the world?
that's right. Yeah, 9 countries.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, there'll never be more than 9 countries,
Why would there be?
that will publish books. God. Yeah, a lot of, I think everything that we deal with is somebody at some point decided that this is the maximum number of things that you'll ever have to deal with.
And then
And
comics.
We're fine. And then the last 5 digits there where it says 51799. So the 5 is a standard check number. It's always 5. It never changes. The 1799 represents 1799. So we know that this particular book is 1799. Where it gets fun is when you get into an absolute, like the absolute Sandman Overture, I think it's called, is $125. So of course its final 4 digits are 9999.
So don't rely on that for your pricing.
You cannot. No,
you're saying. Yeah.
I think the idea of it was that it would be able to kind of help you differentiate between printings, because sometimes they don't go out and fetch a brand new ISBN. This last 5-digit number, they could do whatever they wanted to with it. So the idea was if you had an initial printing that was at $12.99 and your second printing was at $15.99, it would help you identify it.
And we run into that a lot, getting like updated versions of the Avatar books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they everything's the same except that last little bit on the tail end.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of stores only use the ISBN 13, which is absolutely fine. You don't need that last little bit unless you're doing really, really kind of deep stock checking and you want to make sure that you aren't duplicating or selling like last year's when you're selling this year's. Magazine publications have their own system called BiPad. So it is the first 6 digits represent the company. The next 5 digits are the publication number. So together, this will always be Star Wars Insider. And then the next 2 numbers, so this 6 is a check digit, same as everything else. So it goes back and calculates all those other numbers. The 59 represents the issue number. There's 12 issues in a year of Star Wars. Actually, there's 10 issues in a year of Star Wars Insider. So of course, this is 59.
So I wonder if initially, because magazines used to come out as volumes.
Yeah.
Right. So they were assuming that they would change the series number.
I don't think so, because the series were supposed to stay for the life of your series, according to BiPad's instructions.
Really? Even with the volume changes.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of old Wired magazines around here somewhere, so I should actually go through them and see, like, kind of, because I've got some from like 2010. I'd be interested to see, like, because they did call them different. Like every year was a volume, and if you put the spines together, they always made up a picture for the year.
Oh, nice! I didn't know.
So yeah, I'd be interested in seeing whether or not that's true for those guys. So this is actually a direct market version of this cover, and so it's 5.9. I went through and what they usually do is this is issue 209. So for the non-direct market version, this is 0.9, and for the direct market version this month, it's 5.9. So there is a little bit of a differentiator, but not enough that you can like hang your hat on it. And I'm going to have to go through all of our data and make sure that we're actually properly getting all these. I know we are, because I have a subscription to,
and it's working,
and then I get the Star Wars Insider. I'm such a nerd. Comic barcodes, of course, are a little bit different. They're very similar to the BiPad numbers. And since the 1980s, we've used a UPC-A or GITN 12 barcode. It consists of a 5-digit UPC company prefix and then a 5-digit reference number, which you could almost use as the series code, but you can't quite because it's not consistent either. And then a check digit again, which is the sum of the others. And then comics, because they're awesome. So sometime in like around 2000, I think it was a little bit later than 2000. Yeah, because I know this was in place. It was in place well before I started in 2005. They added these last 5 digits. And what these 5 digits represent are the first 3 are the issue number. So this is actually a copy of Detective Comics 1027. so, of course, the issue is 027.
Only 9 countries.
That's
and
right.
only 999 issues.
That's
and
right.
You're cut off.
That's right. That's right. Well, what's kind of good about this is since there were not any UPC codes before 1980, that probably works. Like the math probably works on that, unless comics go on for another 28 years, and then
we'll be using QR codes instead of barcodes by then.
That's right. So 027, this is issue 1027. This is the first variant, and it's the first printing. So if you had a second or third printing, that's where the last number changes. Your variant covers 1 through 9 will change here. If you're over 9 variant covers, that will never happen. So we're okay. Oh, we've got our first spammer in the chat.
I just thought they thought we were really funny.
Yeah, congratulations. So did I. I was so excited for a second. Oh, we're getting laughter. So yeah, that when you get over 9, I didn't actually include an example of this, but they basically co-opt both the printing and the cover number to get to that. So yeah, that becomes a problem. So I guess that's our first topic of conversation is let's talk about well, actually I think I've got kind of a slide on. I should have actually kind of put this a little bit earlier. So issue sequence number is what Diamond calls the cover number. And this is great for 1 to 9 because the UPC actually identifies it. But when you get Eternals with 41 covers, was it? Or Berserker with, I don't know, the first thing was I think 32.
Yeah, or most Dynamite books.
And then they went back to press.
Yeah.
So this is a number that starts at 0, and 0 is your first cover, your A cover. And then every cover after that gets a different number, like 1 through whatever. In theory, 1 and 0 should match up. 1 and 2 should match up in terms of issue sequence number. I don't know why they did base 0, because Diamond doesn't use base 0 for anything else except for issue sequence number.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, did Diamond decide that, or was that somebody at a publisher or something that decided that?
That's a good question, but I like from the research I've done, this was a Diamond initiative. This didn't exist before like 2000 ish. So yeah, it's definitely a Diamond initiative at some point to add an issue sequence number.
Right.
And I don't even know if it was meant to be meaningful. I think we've inferred meaning from it, but I don't think it originally was.
Well, so, it was created at a time where we didn't have more than a couple of covers.
Right. And so, I guess the sequence would indicate like 0 would always be the main cover.
Yeah.
And then 1 in theory would be the B cover, which was fairly rare. Like, because until DC, I think it was like Rebirth, wasn't it? When they started doing consistent B covers
for DC. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like 2014. Marvel, I know, was doing a fair amount of A and B covers back in like the House of M years. Right. But even then, those were like 1 in 25, like there were ratioed variants more than an A and a B cover.
Right. Yeah, you have to go like earlier. I think maybe one of the first ones was like the Man of Steel, and there was the Spider-Man wedding variant.
But
But
even
that
those were
wasn't
more,
common.
those were like newsstand versus direct market, weren't they?
Were they?
Because I don't think like Man of Steel, there was the big
No.
Superman one, which was newsstand. Seriously, there's more spam.
More spam. That's the variant spam right there.
That's right. So yeah, but you might be right. I know there was the entire like newsstand versus direct market, and there was also like, wasn't Justice League International like number 4? There was a different cover for that.
Yeah. And I can't remember the reason. That was a weird thing that happened there. I don't think it
Yeah.
was like a purposeful variant cover.
So yeah, this helps us to identify specifically B covers being subscribable. So something that people can recurringly subscribe to, and it's really important for the kind of like maintaining of customers, uh, more so than like, you know, us keeping things sorted, because in theory we could probably do that with the UPC code.
Mm-hmm.
This really kind of helps us to figure that out. Let me jump way back here. So we use data for a lot of different things. I think data is the backbone of the industry, and it's the backbone of any industry. The data is the part that all of the ordering comes on, and when we deal with kind of modern shipping and modern ordering and everything getting closer and closer to just in time, that data becomes more important because it has to be right earlier in the process,
Mm-hmm.
because we have a tighter and tighter window. And we're at a point now where comics are on final order cutoff literally days before they're printed. So the window there is super tight. You know, most publishers used to do a 20 to 30% overprint, and I don't think anybody's doing more than like a, you know, super tight margin now, and that's just in case there's damages or, you know, catastrophic things at the publisher or printer level. So solicitations are the first one. We all know about this. Information for retailers and consumers to know what's coming up. Important that information is right there, although it's probably the least important at that point. For marketing, for news and media, they're looking at data to find interesting things that are happening. Ordering. So once we get to the ordering stage, that data had better be pretty solid. But it's not. In most cases, it's when you're doing initial orders, the data is so out of whack, it's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
Retail intake. So by the time that you're actually getting things in, it has to be right. Although we get UPCs that are printed different than what they're listed all the time.
We sent out an email with incorrect writers listed because of bad data the other day. And like when you're talking Jonathan Hickman versus Ben Percy or something, that can be a big difference for a customer.
Absolutely. And then you're left holding the bag on a lot of this stuff as a retailer.
And the board.
And the actual physical comic that nobody cares right now. In terms of sales, both online and offline sales require some elements of data, but they're kind of different. For online sales, like if you're on the web, you definitely need, you know, your creator info. You're going to need your description info. You're going to need a title, issue number, those kind of things. Very, very important. Offline, you really just need some sort of identifier that can tie it back to a couple other pieces of information. Mm-hmm. And then the secondary market, back issues require a whole other set of data, which could include pedigree information from CGC or what is it, CBDSGXYZ?
Yes, that's what it is.
Market pricing and more information like that. And this is why we think that good data matters. So we've been in a number of talks with Comics Pro and a bunch of different folks around data. And Django and I have really put a lot of thought into like, what are the things that we actually need to sell something? And I think this Django, we didn't really have a chance to chat about this before, but I think this kind of boils down the stuff that we really need. Primary identifier, a single way that identifies it no matter who the distributor is.
Even if you're a magazine.
Yeah. So in this case, we would use the UPC code. But as we've learned, magazine UPC codes don't always work. And magazines are probably a big one because people get magazines from a number of different suppliers, and it's not always Diamond. So yeah, that's a good one. You need some sort of name, description, image, what is this actual product. You need a product type, which is like the shape of the product, which helps to kind of compare it to other things like it, but also helps you to shelve it on the system, wherever that system is. A vendor, so DC, Marvel, Boom, Image, whoever it is. You need some dimensions. So if you're selling anything online, you need to know what those dimensions are. If you're selling them in store, you kind of need to know that too, because if you're getting, Wednesday comics, where the heck are you going to put that darn thing? Yeah. Some of those, have you seen those Taschen books that are like?
Yeah, we've ended up with some big surprises. The biggest bummer in the last couple of years was the Heroes at Home that Marvel published.
Okay.
And we saw it as like a $10 cover price. We're like, oh yeah, that looks like a cool little cute trade paperback full of cartoons. And it came in and it was like 4 inches by 4 inches. Not what we expected at all.
Where the heck do you even put that thing?
We made little tiny shelves for it.
So as a comics retailer, did you know that you'd be involved in woodworking at some point?
No idea. But it sure is nice to be good at shelves now. Thanks, Marvel.
Distributor information. So where can you get it from, release and order cutoff dates, and then tons of other information like genre, binding, special notes, etc. This is the other info, things like genre. As we start dealing with other distributors, and specifically Penguin Random House, we're finding that things are getting shelved in very, very different places. Penguin Random House uses, what's that called?
BISAC,
which is not a bifurcation of something. It's actually a code. So it's created by the Open Book Group Standards something. And
that's them.
What they basically do is they have just hundreds and hundreds of categories for things. So the good news is that, like, manga, for example, isn't just all under manga like it is with Diamond. It actually gets down to the kind of granularity. And we've done some work to kind of reverse engineer some of that stuff back up a level so that we can have a little bit more granularity with the traditional Diamond genres. And we've started kind of boosting those up and giving a lot more data to them, and we'll kind of keep on that path.
The great thing about the BISAC is that it's like multi-tiered categories.
It is, yeah.
So it's books, manga, sports, books, manga, romance.
That's the great thing, and it's also the curse. It's because you can't really, like, what if somebody just wants all the sports books, right? Now you've got manga sports, and you've got comic sports, and you've got book sports, and you've got...
I think that's up to us to parse and regurgitate properly.
It's true, yeah. But it is nice to have it at such a granular level. It's super great. And a lot of those products will have multiple BISAC categories. So they'll have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. So that kind of addresses some of that as well. For comics, we also need a series code, cover identification, so some sort of way of knowing which cover it is, ratio information, how many copies do you need to order or to qualify for it. We also need things like, so ratio information is also important in the pricing for you. We also need reprint information. What is a reprint and what's not? And Django and I have been talking with the distributors about, the publishers about things like a family code. And what's interesting is at the Marvel and DC level, they already have this. They know what family all the Batman stuff belongs to. They also have story codes. So they all bring them into a storyline. We just want to kind of surface that a little bit more so that we can get that to retailers and consumers.
Because right now, a lot of times it shows up in the title where you have, Flash, what was it, like Flash 13 or whatever, metal, because it crossed over with metal, which is, it kind of works, but it's not a very elegant way to group series and storylines.
Yeah, for sure. I think for now, personally, we're probably going to hit this with the manual hammer and just start building those.
Yeah.
By default. I'd like to get them done in time for Final Infinite Dark Crisis. Feels right.
Sure.
Whatever the next DC crossover is, because I think that one is going to have a lot of kind of crossover things.
Is this plan going to cause the Final Infinite Dark Crisis?
I think it does. Yeah.
You finally managing all the data that they give us?
It's just I flip my table and that makes everything darker. I love the contrast in our two backdrops. By the way, yours is like so bright and cheery, and and mine is so dark and dour. And I'm in my underground cave. And
you're like Batman.
Yeah, I really need to add some like behind me lighting to kind of spruce this place up a little. So yeah, we're working with the distributors and the publishers to try and get some more information. And trying and get it consistent. So we talked a little bit about the issue sequence number, or what we do when publishers want to have more than 9 variant covers. There's also series codes, which are how we know what belongs to what. So it's a number that associates all of the Amazing Spider-Mans together.
You put an annual in there.
Don't start on annuals now. Or a one shot. So what's interesting is there's an entire debate on, is an annual part of the series or not? Is it external to the series? Django's argument is that it's not part of the series. My argument is I don't really care. I just want a decision. But I think if it's not part of the series, then it has to be related to the series in some way, because often an annual is a continuation or a finishing of a story. But that goes even higher. Like, there was a time where Marvel was ending series, like Mighty Thor is the one that comes to mind. The Jane name just left.
Foster.
Jane Foster, She-Thor series. At the end of it, there was like a Valhalla one-shot special that literally was the final issue of the series. And at the same time, there was a Venom miniseries that was out that ended, and then there was a follow-up Venom issue that was literally the 13th issue of that series.
And Logan did it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there needs to be some way to tie those things together. We do it through a clever thing called cloning, where you can clone all the subscribers from a series onto a one shot. That puts a lot of burden onto the retailer. And something we're trying to get the publishers to understand is that by removing some of these burdens from the retailers, they'll sell more stuff. And that's good.
I'd rather physically be putting a comic in somebody's hand than clicking a bunch of buttons to digitally maybe get them to buy a comic up 2 months from now.
Right. And I think the problem, well, and so that presupposes that you remember to order that at that point, and that you remember that all these people are going to want it, when they come in. Like, it's just so so the next two are my favorite two slides because they're angry nerds. So what are the different ways that the data can be bad? So the first one, and kind of the worst case scenario, is bad UPC info, which we see quite a bit right now. We're seeing a lot of UPCs that get changed or fixed sometime in the future. But the problem with that is it means that we can't trust anything because of it. So with Diamond and Penguin Random House having the Marvel stuff, there's a lot of hand kind of reviewing going on with that stuff to make sure that it makes sense. And I have this month 132 Marvel products of 261 that they've put out that are, so that's comics only. There are 261 individual covers in the April solicitations,
Mm-hmm.
and 130 of those are in some way not right. So they're going to require manual like review and correction from us.
And that's diamond mismatched with penguin?
Or it could be just a lot of it is issue sequence numbers are off.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of some of it is that the creators are different between penguin and diamond. So we're
Right.
going through and reviewing that. So yeah, it's like almost 50% of the stuff that's in the database from Marvel this month is wrong.
It's super frustrating.
And the worst part is we don't know which one is the canonical data. So which
Right.
one's right, which one's wrong. So
Right.
we've got to work on that. No, thank you. I would like to not have you call me. Thank you.
Is that more spam?
No, that's actually ironically it's my phone company calling on my phone. Bad series code information. So this is Django's thing about annuals being considered part of a series sometimes. One shots are sometimes considered part of a series.
Trial of the Amazons number 1 and 2 had different series codes, and both of them matched to different one shots in the Wonder Woman universe.
The Shadow War, I think, has the Robin series code,
which
DC.
Almost makes sense, but it's not what a series code is for.
No,
it would be better to have that be like a storyline code.
Yeah, absolutely
available to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we're still kind of, and a lot of these problems have just kind of cropped up recently. Like the series codes seem to be okay for a while, but they've gotten weird, and it usually times with when people leave, come and go at the different publishers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're working with them on that stuff. Solicitation information is important that we get it right because, like Django said earlier, if you've got bad creator information or even like storyline information, that can cause under or over ordering on products, which like you're either leaving money on the table that a retailer could have enjoyed, or you're taking money out of their pockets because you're leaving them with unsellable product.
Yeah. Nobody wins.
Oh, Danica says that the other day, I got to show this one. The other day, I added Trial of the Amazons and then tried adding Wonder Girl, and the system gave me the already subscribed pop up.
It took me an hour, and I sent an email to DC and Lunar afterwards, just describing the fallout of that little mistake that they made.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through and fix that one because I thought Wonder Girl was. I kind of left Wonder Girl alone because it was Trial of the Amazons. Wonder Girl was continuing the Wonder Girl series code, but I didn't know that Trial of the Amazons also. Oh, what a nightmare!
It was like a Wonder Girl one shot, like an all ages one shot that had the same series code as Trial of the Amazons number 2.
Oh, I thought I just removed that out of the system because
it shouldn't have.
Well, and not only that, but it's like it's a one shot, isn't it? Like a reprint of a graphic novel that came out. Like it's a reprint of the first 30 pages of a graphic novel that came out 2 years ago.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
What a pain.
You're giving me nightmare flashbacks to last Friday.
Wrong pricing. So different pricing than solicited or different pricing than was printed. Printing errors are going to happen, and there's not much you can do about those. My concern really is more around the stuff that seems to be happening recently because there's been a lack of continuity between people who leave and people who come. Height, weight, or other information can all be bad. And
that stuff should be blank before it's wrong.
Yes.
Like we would rather know that it doesn't exist than have somebody's best guess in there.
I think that goes for most of this stuff, like creator information. I'd rather there was no creator information than creator information that's wrong. If you can't announce the creator until you put it out in
print,
the New York Times, then like don't announce it, and don't certainly put it as Chip Zdarsky and who was that? The one
Chiquetto?
it was the month that X Lives and X Deaths were out. Like Chip Zdarsky and one other dude were in everything.
Yeah, wasn't it Chip and Chiquetto? Because it was the Daredevil team that just got copied across everybody's creators.
Yep, Sabretooth, X Lives, X Deaths. And I was like, wow, Chip's good for him. Canadian boy does good. Good job, Chip. So why does this matter? It's not just a problem for nerds. The entire industry can't change because a bunch of geeks care about data, can it? And we hear from publishers, we want to do cool things that sell more comics, and that's going to break your systems. Or we know data is important, but it's not the most important thing. And it's been working okay so far. That's what we keep hearing from folks, but it's not, and it's getting worse.
The hardest part about this is that I think that this happens at a level that most people who are selling comics don't even know that all this stuff is so messy one level up, because it gets cleaned by somebody before a store has to deal with it. Like I certainly wasn't aware of just how bad this stuff was until I started digging into the data to create our own system. And nobody even knows that this is something to complain about. They just know that it's broken somewhere.
Yeah. And to be totally fair, I don't think it was as bad in 2020 as it has been. So there's been a couple of key people at Diamond who've left or are no longer there.
Like DC and Marvel?
No, like actual key like employees.
Yeah.
Like there were some data folks there who were really, really good at data and really got it. And those folks are gone. And yeah, it was a one distributor system. So it wasn't that hard to at least trust that even if the data wasn't right, at least it was consistently wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not the case anymore. And the more publishers we add on and distributors we add on, the more important it is that the core pieces of the data get right.
Yeah.
And the other big thing that I have tried to convince folks, but they just don't believe me. I've been doing this now since 2015, and there's been a massive demographic shift in the owners of comic stores. And Django, I mean, this speaks to your own experience. The dudes who owned stores $10 10 years ago are often not with us anymore. And either they've left the industry or they're not of this earth, right? And younger people are taking it over. And the first thing I hear from every young dude or dudette who takes over a comic shop is, I've got to get stuff out of paper. I've got to get stuff out of binders. And I can't be typing things into an old school manual drawer cash register anymore. Like I need data to make decisions. So I think there's a seismic shift in the industry from a retail standpoint, where I mean, the people we saw at Comics Pro, by and large, are 10 years younger than they were a decade ago.
Yeah.
And a decade has gone by, folks, and those people get younger.
That's a whole generation.
Something happened, right? And you hear more and more about folks that want to get out of the industry, and there's a ton of people, young people, that want to get in. Yeah. So I think this is a really crucial piece for the industry to kind of go forward with. Thoughts, Django?
I'm tired. Data makes me tired.
Well, the good news is that I think, together we at least don't have to fight all these battles alone. And the more people that we get understanding how important this stuff is. So Time Travelers, these guys are in Michigan. I forget Michael Morgan. I couldn't remember his name. He's like an Accenture guy, so he gets data. He understands kind of where we're coming from, and he is kind of flabbergasted by how bad the data coming in is, and how he wants to be able to kind of Berkeley. There we go, Berkeley, Michigan. And he's been frustrated with how bad the data was, and he's a good example of like a guy who came in and bought an existing shop and is kind of converting it into a more modern place.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that, we could crowdsource a lot of this. The problem is most of that also needs to be double checked. So there's a lot of code that has to vet the data, make sure the data types are at least rational for what we expect, and then probably a human has to look at it as well to make sure that annuals don't get into the main series code.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing. When I look at some of my data that I get, like we crowdsource like new UPC codes and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but often the UPC codes are somebody will scan in a UPC plus 5 and it's a UPC 12 that came up, and
Right.
so the system thinks it's a whole new book, and then we have
Right.
to manually merge those guys together.
Yeah.
It's a pain. I think we should be able to solve that with our new changes that we made to the system, but
Mhm.
sometimes the UPC scanner just pulls up a wrong number or somebody types in something wrong. Like it
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah, that kind of error correction is tricky, but, like, you and I have been talking to distributors and publishers so much lately, and I feel like they're hearing what we're saying.
Yep,
I don't know
absolutely.
if they're prioritizing what we're saying, but I think they understand what the issue is.
Yeah,
And I think that as soon as one of them takes us seriously and makes big changes, I think we'll probably be able to show that they make more money, and maybe they should continue doing these brilliant ideas that you and I have presented to them.
for sure. And I think we can start giving them better data. I talked
Mhm.
to SourcePoint Press a while ago.
Uh-huh.
It's probably a year and a half ago now, and that's another reason I got to get to Michigan. So I'm, by the way, Michael, I'm coming to Michigan the end of June. So I will be down there and I'm going to make a whole bunch of visits, and you guys are definitely on my list, especially if you're anywhere near Jolly Pumpkin Brewery. If you are, just give me a table reservation there and I'll be there. Um, so yeah, when we were talking, we were actually talking about he wants kind of geographical data. So he would like aggregate geographical data that would say, when we did a show in California sales increased dramatically. And they don't get that data
Oh,
from Diamond right now. And I was like, I'm sure we could start providing that kind of data in aggregate for publishers,
yeah.
because it would totally influence how they start to, do shows, how they do their road shows, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, this is a good point by Danica. Having customer purchase history is worth its weight in gold for making recommendations.
Yeah.
I think also our systems, as they get more intelligent, should be able to suggest you subscribe to this.
Hmm.
You should also subscribe to this. Uh, Walt's Comic Shop says it almost seems that most industry players just can't or don't want to afford having proffered data. It's not only viable for product data, but also goes for logistics. Yeah, I don't think it's that they don't want it. I think it's that I think honestly the number one problem with all these places right now is continuity, that they're
Hmm.
losing key players. When we saw the biggest Diamond problem, was that like December last year?
January, December. Yeah.
They had lost Diamond or DC. Sorry, I'm thinking DC. I think it was January, December last year. They lost like one of their key um, data guys. He was laid off. He was part of the big cutbacks, and it was a year ago because it was March last year. I remember it distinctly because he got let go with that big swath of people that got let go.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the lunar solicitations started coming out like a month after the diamond
Yeah.
solicitation, or a week after the diamond solicitations. Now they're at a point where their solicitations are a week before. But didn't you hear that somebody was off?
Yeah, they have their main data person has been off for a while, and I think we still have another few weeks before they're back.
Yeah,
But when they're back, I've got a note into them that we should probably talk.
for sure.
I got some ideas.
I
How
have
about good
plans.
data?
I
That's
have
an idea.
plans. Yeah, it's I mean and it's not all bad news. I think we're starting to build systems that are starting to take care of this stuff. I
Mhm.
know Stu from Comic Hub has had a scheme in the works for an age, to build his own system, and he says that we can look at it, but I don't know. Oh,
I'm ready. I'll
I
show
don't
him
want
mine.
I don't want to do this. So, but yeah, I think like to me the biggest waste is to have three of us all doing the same kind of work over and over again.
Yeah.
And so having a single source of truth somewhere would be super helpful.
Well, it's the three of us, and then it's anybody who's not using one of our three systems is also doing it. So like one mistake in a barcode means that 2,000 retailers have to fix it.
Yep.
Instead of just getting
Absolutely.
it right the first time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of wasted time that could be put into sales.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like between you, me, and Stu, we really only account for maybe 400
Yeah.
stores. So there's another 2,100, yeah, that when something's wrong, they're getting that information somewhere else, or maybe not even getting it. And
Right.
that means publishers are losing sales, because if somebody isn't sitting there making sure that all these series are able to be ordered, they're just not getting ordered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I had anything else to say. Let me check my slide deck. Standardization. So we want standards. Yeah. Ensure the product can be ordered easily. Ensure consumers know what they're getting. They make everyone more money.
We would all like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's good. Does anybody have any questions in our slides here, or in our chats? I'm gonna do a little plug for you. So
if
guys,
you want to hear me swear a lot,
he does swear a lot. It's a lot. Like my mom can't hear it.
Jeff's mom listens to it. It's
so Django, Jeff, and Roman review comics. It's a great way to find out stuff that's on the shelf that you may not be familiar with. They never talk about bad stuff. I think the worst review I've ever heard is a 7. But they talk about good stuff, and
we read the 2s. We just don't talk about them.
That's awesome though. Like I don't think we've ever talked about that. I think that is probably the most refreshing part of your podcast, because negativity is super easy, and what it ends up doing is dragging the whole thing down, and you just focus on that. So I think the fact that you guys concertedly focus on what's good is great, because there's way more good than there is bad in comics.
We try not to talk about the comic data, just the comics themselves.
Yeah, because the bad is the data.
Yeah.
Dream Days says, has Diamond ever said how many Comic Suite users they have? When we were at Comics Pro, didn't they say something like, did they say 300 or 500?
I can't remember. It was somewhere in that range. It was more than you and me and Stu combined.
Yeah.
But also they're not reacting super well to the multi-distributor thing, and I don't know if they're going to be able to.
Well, and not only that, but like the software is kind of old and dated, and a lot of folks are on the old Comic Suite system, which
RMS.
Isn't supported anymore. So you've got computers that are dying, and like that. To me, I never want to be an alarmist, but I'm horrified by any system that you physically have in your store. If you're Wonder Harbor in Edmonton, that the entire store got burned down to the ground, like bad enough that the store is dead, but all your data is gone as well, and that would just be terrible. But I quick shout out, by the way, to Wonder Harbor, because Andrew has been a customer of Managed Comics for a couple of years. Great team. And what happened there is just crappy. I don't know if you heard, but they kind of got targeted, and and somebody went in and sprayed gasoline around the entire place and lit it on fire. So I believe Andrew is working with Danica and Brandon over at Variant Edition now, and they're hoping to kind of help customers still get their comics and things. Time Traveler says, sales are absolutely being lost when we put books in folks' pulls because it's related to their pull list. They tend to pick it up like 80% of the time. Yeah, I mean, from a numbers perspective, I know over 80% of the Managed Comics customers do not log into their pulls monthly to change it. And so that leaves the burden on the retailers to change things. We've made tools that make that really easy, but still, it's another thing you've got to do every month.
And one thing that I would like to see, and I haven't built the reporting for this, but we will clone people over. We call it auto subscribing. So we'll auto sub people over based on a writer or based on a character.
Yep.
So sometimes you get moved over because it's Hulk, and sometimes you get moved over because it's Tom King. I'd love to see what those numbers are for stores in each of those instances. Like, do we have 90% creator following and 70% character follow? Or,
Right.
you know, how does that break down?
That's interesting too. I've never really thought about like how you could auto sub like Donny Cates, and that's a tricky one because not every creator is going to have a following, but the ones that do have passion, like Donny Cates, people will follow Donny Cates no matter where he goes, right?
Yeah.
Danica says this is a great way to look at comics, keep it positive. I 100% agree. Norse Comics said, Diamond said 300 to 400 to 600. I don't remember if that was Comic Suite or if that was for Pullbox. I know they're advertising around 500 people right now. I also know there's about 489 of those people that are completely disillusioned and angry. Pullbox. So
have you met my friend Brian?
I hear from them all the time. So yeah, I'm not sure whether that was Comic Suite or Pullbox. Dream Day says no, they can't, which is why we left them back in July 20. Yeah, the multi-distributor, they're really struggling with that.
Yeah.
Madness says, is there a way to pull up login data for customers? Geez, that's a good question. I'd have to look at Shopify's kind of customer record and see. I know they talk about. I don't think they do actually. I think they just say when they've purchased things, but not necessarily login. That would be an interesting thing for us to add. Last login information.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've already got it in your amazing unicorn system.
Nobody's using it yet, Brian. It's just us.
That's awesome.
We didn't even let our customers see it yet.
That's perfect. Okay, so Django, they can find you at a comics place. I definitely think people should check out your podcast. I think they should check out thecomicsplace.com as well, because you guys have an awesome website. I've stolen many things from your website. So, and I know you've stolen tons of things from Managed Comics. So it's
I pluck them straight out of your brain, man.
So my wife often will say to me, so this Django guy, he's like a competitor of yours, right? And I'll be like, yeah. And she's like, and you and he sit and drink whiskey and talk about business? Yep, that's right.
Database structures even.
You're not worried you're not worried about him like stealing all your customers. We're in totally different markets. It's fine.
Yeah, it's probably fine.
If you are a store who wants really, really deep data, who wants all kinds of like really, really intricate reports, who wants to manage a lot of the kind of life cycle of your customers, 100% Comic Shop Assistant is your product. If you're interested in a hybrid online offline model where your customers are going to manage their lists and your customers are going to do a lot of that heavy lifting for you, I think Managed Comics is the solution. And I think that's where we're different. And then I'm going to eventually kind of move down into the pull box market, because we already have the data, and it's just going to be a matter of figuring out how to display the Managed Comics stuff on any website. Right. And once we do that, then we'll have we'll have this part, and Django can have this very, very important part that I don't understand enough to do.
We basically started doing the same thing from the opposite side. I'm doing it from the register out, and you're doing it from the customer in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dream Days wants to know if we're ready for users yet.
Yeah,
we are not. We're getting ready to bring some beta stores in, and once we've got them under control and make sure that it makes sense to more than just us, then we'll start rolling out the rest of the program.
Okay, and this is, by the way, this is the best part, because Danica wasn't. A couple of folks that aren't here right now, we're in our initial betas, and this is where you actually find out all the things that you didn't know that you thought you knew.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot. Jeff and I have been talking about, like, oh yeah, this is really easy. You just do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and then it's done. It's like, I don't know, man. Let's see if we can cut some of those clicks out. What do you think?
When we first went live, we thought we were going to be live in September, and I think it was like mid-October by the time we got through Shopify's QA, and you guys don't have to deal with that, so that's a huge headache out of your way. But then we were going to go kind of broad early December, and I think it was like the last week of December where we kind of opened it up to more stores, and it was January where we went super broad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's those first couple months are just a lot of learning.
I'm the kind of guy that moves fast and breaks things, but also I'm terrified of doing that for other people. So I'm having this weird conflict inside. Like, yeah, let's give it to everybody right now, and they'll probably go out of business because just enough things don't work quite right. So,
no, I think what you're doing is right. You go slow and use prudence and judgment, and
new to me.
And that'll just that'll give me that much more runway just to beat you and
do it.
Just eventually buy you. All right, folks, I think that's going to wrap us up for the day. If you have any questions, as always, please send them to help@managedcomics.com. If you've got questions for Django, go to the comicsplace.com, and I believe there's a contact us form there, and he'll talk to you, or check out comicshopassistant.com. And he can get back to you and give you what is it, like a 7-hour demo that you guys do?
Yeah, it's coming up on 7 hours. We had one go almost 3 hours the other day, and Jeff and I are like, oh God, we made too many features to show people.
Yeah. Mine's a tight 30. So if you want a tight 30-minute demo,
we got it down to an hour and a half last time.
That's pretty.
We talked fast.
Time Traveler says friendly competition is a great thing. Well,
Absolutely.
he's a good guy, so that's why I can be a friendly competitor. Plus, a border separates us, so unless we want to declare international war, we're fine. Thanks for your time, everyone. Django, thank you as always. I'm gonna sign off, and then if you want to stick around, we can chat.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And